Hi everyone, Dr. Bruce here. In this video, I'm going to cover some respiratory anatomy, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of the models I've been producing. Lately, I've been working on with a data set called the Z Anatomy data set and producing my own models in Blender and then hosting these on Sketchfab. So I'm not a 3D modeler by any means, but I'm learning a little bit at a time in order to produce these models. And what I like about them is that I can license these CC, Creative Commons attribution, which means they're free for everybody. So not as good as Biodigital Human, but still very useful because I can make my own custom models. So let's take a look at some of these. We're going to take a look at the respiratory system. Let me just go full screen here. All right. So here's the respiratory system model, and I'm just going to go through the basic parts on this one. There's not a lot of anatomy in the respiratory system. So we start with the nasal cavity, and then the air would flow into the nasal cavity to the pharynx, and then down to the larynx, then to the trachea, and then to the two primary bronchi. And we'll see some more detail in that in the next model on that. Those bronchi will split into other bronchi, and then the air will end up in the lung. So you have the right lung here and the left lung. So the right lung has three lobes, a superior, middle, and inferior. And it's interesting to note that that inferior lobe really goes posterior. So if you were to look from the back, you'll see a lot of that is posterior, the posterior lobes. So kind of an interesting anatomical thing because in pictures, you don't really, in two-dimensional pictures, you don't really see that. So you have three lobes on the right and only two lobes on the left. There's a superior and inferior lobe. And then there are fissures dividing the lobes. So there's a horizontal fissure on the right lung and then an oblique fissure. But on the left lung, there's only an oblique fissure. So superior and inferior lobes and an oblique fissure. There's also this groove here for the heart called the cardiac notch. Okay, so let's X out of this one. So, and go to the next one. There we go. Let's let it res in here. And this has a little more detail in that I've removed some of the superior lobe here from the left lung. So what you see here is the primary bronchus splitting now into secondary bronchi, and then they split into tertiary bronchi. Those bronchi then become narrower passages called the bronchioles and end up at the smallest functional unit of the lung called the alveolus. And that's where the gas exchange occurs in the alveoli. So the lung is primarily made up of these alveoli. Back when we used to do cadaver dissection, I used to do that. We would, dissect the lung, and then it would look like a sponge because you could see all the little holes. Those were the alveoli. All right, let's go to the next model. So let's go to the larynx. All right, so sometimes students have a little trouble with the larynx. So I created a model of just the larynx to help you, and it's simple, so that you're not overwhelmed by a lot of structures. First of all, up here we have the hyoid bone. Remember, the hyoid bone doesn't articulate with any other bone, but is held in place by muscles and ligaments. All right, and then we have the large thyroid cartilage, sometimes called the Adam's apple. So you have the hyoid bone, the thyroid cartilage, and then below that is the smaller cricoid cartilage, and then the trachea. If we go around to the back, the tracheal cartilages are a hyaline cartilage. So hyaline cartilage is an important cartilage in the body. We learned about it in the skeletal system and joints. It lines the joints, the ends of the bones for the joints. And bones actually form from hyaline cartilage. So we see it in the trachea as well, but it's open in the back to allow some flexibility for the trachea. All right, so there are some other things back here. There's the epiglottis, which is a tracheal cartilage piece that closes down over this triangular space called the glottis. So when you swallow, the epiglottis closes down over the space called the glottis. We also have these ligaments here. These are the vocal cords, and they're also called vocal ligaments. So there are what are called true vocal cords, and then the vestibular ligaments, which are the false vocal cords. So here's that triangular glottis. Okay, let's go back. All right. Oh yeah, the smaller cartilages. Um, these are the arytenoid cartilages. They're paired cartilages in the back of the larynx, and then these are the corniculate cartilages. The corniculates are the smallest cartilages. So there are some smaller cartilages. So if you just review the cartilages, it's thyroid, cricoid, um, corniculate, and arytenoid cartilages in the back. All right, hopefully that should do it. I'll put the link in for this page if you want to take a look at these models. Like I said, they're simple, easy to use, and they should run on your phone or anything else. All right, so if you have any questions or anything, feel free to contact me via the inbox or my email. I'm happy to help in any way I can, and we'll see you in cyberspace.